Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to the public forum of the group exhibit Hydrogen Fuel Cells and Batteries. We are discussing this morning a thesis which is called There's No Energy Transition Without Hydrogen. And we will discuss it with the board member of the Deutscher Wasserstoff und Brennstoffzellen-Verband e.V., which is the German Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Association in Germany. And we will talk about, with the board member, Dr. Ulrich Schmidtchen. Welcome here on stage, Dr. Schmidtchen. It's a pleasure to have you here. Have a seat. And to all of you, also have a seat if you like to have a drink on the house and discuss with us this thesis, no energy transition without hydrogen. I'm pretty sure that Dr. Schmidtchen has an answer to any question. First questions I will give to you. Well, first thing I would like to ask, are you very sure? Is it just wishful thinking for the Association of Hydrogen Fuel Cells in Germany?
No, it's not just our idea, it's simply a fact.
It's simply a fact, okay. So please prove it. We have already 30% renewables in the grid. We will have probably soon have a smart grid, which is intelligent, and we will have a lot of privately owned batteries forming a virtual grid. So who needs hydrogen then?
When you talk about grid, I presume you mean the electricity grid.
Sure. Yeah, the electricity grid.
And this is one mistake many people make, because when we talk about energy transition, it's not enough to consider simply the electricity. When the energy transition is limited to an electricity transition, it will walk against the wall. This alone will not do. We must include also the heat market, the heat grid, or the heat supply, quite generally. These belong together, and also these together are not enough. We must also include the mobility, because the mobility is a very important energy consumer in our country, and in other countries as well, and also a very important producer of greenhouse gases and other emissions. So only when we put these three together, then we will have an energy transition which really works. And this works only with hydrogen.
This is the big issue of sector coupling, what you're talking about. Sector electricity grid, gas grid, heating, transport.
Sector coupling is a big catchword at this time.
It really is. But couldn't we also organize, let's say, the transportation? Let's talk about transportation. Couldn't we organize it purely with battery electric vehicles in the end? Batteries are coming down in costs. We can have a large range of batteries. We can have a recharging station at every home. That's easy to do, isn't it?
Well, don't forget that a fuel cell car is also a battery car. It has a pretty nice battery.
A bit more expensive, though.
The pure battery car will certainly have its place in the energy landscape of tomorrow. But it is limited for quite physical reasons to certain applications. Battery cars are usually small. They usually run for, they usually have a short range, and it takes a few hours to charge them. When you need something for really big loads and for long distances, and when you don't have, when you simply can't drink so much coffee as to wait for the car to be charged, then there is no way around the fuel cell.
Well, you're painting a black, something black into that picture. Well, when we think about the development of batteries at the moment, the prices are coming down. We will probably see very soon large cars with a range of, let's say, 500 kilometers, and we will see quick recharges who can recharge it in, let's say, half an hour. So for what exactly will we then still need fuel cell cars?
I don't see it happen so very soon, in particular about the ranges. because the development of batteries is by no means that explosive. There are certain physical limits which you simply cannot avoid. But quite generally, I am happy about every progress in battery development because the fuel cell car benefits from it as well.
But also in fuel cells there are limits because normally you need for PEM fuel cells you need platinum, so they will be always very expensive, and maybe you can't even produce so many because we don't have so much platinum.
The platinum load for the catalysts has gone down in the past years by at least 2 orders of magnitude. And many researchers all over the world are looking for substitutes for platinum. There are substitutes for platinum. They simply, at this time, aren't good enough to really kick the platinum out of the market. But I think sooner or later this will happen.
So you're pretty sure also the fuel cells will come down in prices?
Oh, quite definitely. And the platinum is not the important factor about the price of the fuel cells.
What is the important factor?
Look, the battery has its limits. Yes, true. The fuel cell has its limits. True. Horse and cart have limits. Everything has limits, including my shoes.
Okay. So, but what makes you so secure about building up a double infrastructure in all these countries of the world? Because if you say, well, battery cars will have their place in transportation as well as fuel cell cars, then we need a double infrastructure, don't we?
Well, yes. But on the other hand, we already have a double infrastructure. At the filling stations around the corner, you will get gasoline and you will get diesel. This is a double infrastructure. It is much easier to build an infrastructure for hydrogen than for battery electric cars, because when you consider the difference in filling times and the difference in ranges, you will soon find that a hydrogen filling station may easily replace a few hundred electrical charging points.
Right. Okay, you convinced me in transportation. Okay, now let's talk about heating. What can hydrogen do in heating? As far as I know, only fuel cells that run on natural gas and have a reformer and can heat my house and at the same time produce electricity.
Every fuel cell produces heat. This is quite simply a law of nature. In many applications, the heat is an unwanted byproduct. But here, in this case, it's a valuable product which we can use. And it doesn't matter whether you have a PEM cell or a high-temperature cell. Every fuel cell produces heat, which you can use. And when you really have no idea at all what you can do with your hydrogen, which you have produced, for example, from surplus power, you can still feed it into the gas grid, and there it will be used as heat source, either for industrial processes or for homes.
So the micro CHP which are available on the market right now, they all run on natural gas. So you should say no energy transition without natural gas.
Well, the natural, first of all, there are small fuel cells which run on hydrogen, but the majority of them run on natural gas. Well, this is simply a means to get them into the market because we have a very fine natural gas infrastructure here in Germany, while there is no hydrogen infrastructure. And, well, a fuel cell is nice, but only when you have fuel.
So we should build up a hydrogen infrastructure, a pipeline throughout Germany run with hydrogen. What would you think about that?
I think we will have hydrogen pipelines in the future, but I do not necessarily think that every private home will be attached to such a hydrogen pipeline. This can also be done centrally, and high-temperature fuel cells, for example, they also run on things like methanol, natural gas, and so on. You can feed them directly with these fuels without conversion.
Okay, so we could also organize the heating with hydrogen, and the hydrogen comes from the surplus energy we have in the grid already. We need to use it, or we just lose it.
Well, hydrogen is by no means a rare element. Hydrogen is more or less ubiquitous. And there are many processes to make hydrogen. The chemical industry produces a lot of hydrogen. In many cases, the chemical industry uses the hydrogen it produces for other purposes on site. But in many cases, they have hydrogen, they have an excess hydrogen and don't really know what to do with it. And this they put on the market.
Normally they burn it, is it right?
Yes, they mix it with natural gas and they burn it because heat is something which you always need somewhere in the chemical industry. But what we see for the future is that we will get much more wind power and PV, more than we already have. And there will times when these plants produce power which nobody needs. On a nice Sunday afternoon, for example, industry is closed down, and the private consumers, they need very little. Well, what do you do with the power? At the present time, you simply close the plant down, and the owner of the plant still gets money. This is of course nonsense.
He doesn't care, but the energy system does care.
Yes, but the consumer pays for it. Yeah. This is of course nonsense. You can generate a lot of hydrogen from this excess power, and with this hydrogen you can do many things. And we will see that this will be an important source for hydrogen in the future. But only one of them.
This is what we talk about, the power-to-gas station we should install in Germany. There are only some pilot projects at the moment, but they obviously work. But do they work economically?
Well, most of them are part of some funded project. But the time will come, and it will come soon, when they will work economically on their own.
So we need an electrolyzer somewhere to produce the hydrogen, but we don't need it, as you just said. Well, on a Sunday afternoon, we don't need it right now, but we have to store it before we need it to get the baseload power for the grid. So where to store the hydrogen then? Well,
in contrast to electricity, hydrogen has the nice property that you can store it. Yeah? You cannot simply put electrons on a heap, but you can store hydrogen, for example, in tanks or in other sizes. When you want to store a great amount of hydrogen, an interesting thing would be to store it in the earth, either in salt caverns or in porous stone structures. For example, the whole electrical power which is consumed in the state of Schleswig-Holstein in 1 week could be stored in one salt cavern in the form of hydrogen.
Do you have to pressurize it then, or you just put it into this salt cavern there?
Well, there will be some moderate pressurizing, but certainly not as you have it in storage tanks.
So they're as big as they can provide the whole Schleswig-Holstein with this hydrogen.
Yes.
And provide the base load power, even if there's no wind, no sun during a whole week or months, did you say?
Week.
Week, okay.
Yes, the pressurizing of such a cavern is a very technical thing. It depends on how deep in the ground the cavern is, how much the pressure of the earth is, and this should be equalized by the pressure in the cavern.
Dr. Schmidtchen, why don't we just put it into the gas grid? We have a very nice gas grid, also connected to some gas caverns. We just put the hydrogen in the gas grid and use it from there.
Of course, you can do this, and in some places it is done. Well, yes, nice, but it's an act of desperation when you have absolutely no good idea what else you can do with the hydrogen. Because what is the use of hydrogen in the gas grid? You have more flammable gas. Yes, of course, but the hydrogen as such is lost. You will not get it out of the gas grid again, except with a very energy-consuming process, and it's a pity. Hydrogen is valuable. Why should we spoil it?
But hydrogen is different from natural gas. Couldn't you put it into the gas grid and get it out again at another place where you need it?
No, the laws of physics are against it. It's very easy to mix gases, but it's very difficult to separate them.
Oh, right. Okay, that's not possible. And what I've heard...
It's possible, yes, you can do it. But it takes much more power than you get from it.
All right, okay. So what I've heard is you only can put some volume percent into the gas grid. It does accept only like 2 or 5 volume percent in the gas grid. Why is it that so?
This is not true. At this time, the regulation says that you can insert up to 10% of hydrogen volume percent in the gas grid. Well,
I've heard these gas cars that are running, they need less partition of hydrogen in it.
Yes, some customers, they simply don't like the hydrogen in the gas. For example, people who are running gas turbines, or people who need a very constant heat input, like for example the glass industry. About the tanks of natural gas cars, I am not quite sure where this comes from, and this might be a myth.
There's a discussion at least, you know. These are some they don't want to have more hydrogen into it, but it's still a ghost discussion because we don't have so much hydrogen yet.
Yes, discussion means nobody knows it.
Okay. So what will you see in the future? Will we see nets like we had in the up to the 50s, the Stadtgas with 50% hydrogen? In some cities we had that after the war.
Yes, I know this very well. We had it in Berlin for until about 1990.
Oh, really?
Yes. For political reasons, West Berlin was not connected to the natural gas grid of West Germany.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have sent my crystal ball to the polishers. We will certainly see some hydrogen infrastructure. But I will not bet my money on that we will have such an infrastructure as we had in the past, with a gas pipeline in every street. This can be done in more intelligent ways.
Dr. Schmidtchen, so sector coupling means we have the electricity grid with a lot of renewables. We should use the electricity directly if ever possible, but surplus electricity we should produce hydrogen. We could produce them on the filling station themselves. You know, you can put an electrolyzer at the refueling station, and that's easy to use it then into fuel cell cars.
Yes, of course. It always depends on the local conditions. And for example, how far the next wind park is, and how much you pay for the electrical energy. You can do it this way, you can do it that way. It's always a matter of calculation.
Okay, and but probably you have still to be solved some political issues about that, because what I've heard is if you produce hydrogen by electrolyzer, you take the electricity out of the grid and have to pay taxes for that. And if you use the hydrogen then in the car or wherever, you have to pay the taxes twice.
Well, yes. Taking the energy for the electrolyzer simply from the plug in the wall is not such a good idea, both technically and also financially. And the regulations which we have now are simply not yet prepared for this case of application, and some work on this must be done. And that is one of the jobs of the German Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association, to get on the nerves of the politicians and to push them a little bit in the right direction.
And that's exactly what you're doing, you and your colleagues of the DWV, which you can all visit at the booth E63. Unfortunately, we run out of time already. I still have some more questions, but I may give them to you at your booth and your questions as well. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Dr. Schmidtchen, for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, next interview is coming up with Achim Edelmann. He's Area Manager New Technologies of Gräbener Maschinentechnik. And this interview will be about from prototyping to high precision production technology for metal microstructure plates. So please stay tuned and listen to the next interview as well. Thank you very much.